Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the Stogie Review video review. I am Walt White, and this time I have another weekly cigar review for you. Something that's a little overdue. I wanted to do this a little while ago. Unfortunately, I caught a cold and just wasn't able to do it, but that is the cigar that goes along with the interview I did with Hal Rubin last week, and that is the Flor Dominicana Cheroot. And there's really nothing to look at, so if I hold it up to the camera, there's really nothing for you to see. This particular cigar has an interesting story. If you haven't listened to the interview just yet, I would suggest maybe hitting pause and jumping over the interview before you watch the review. There's some interesting information as far as how Hal Rubin came to have this cigar and get it in Empire Cigars, and where it came from. Now, the first time I heard about this cigar was a few years ago. It was on the Club Stogie forums, and there was a discussion about, what was the strongest cigar you've ever had, and it was one of those threads along those lines. And someone brought up the quote-unquote ice pick by La Flor Dominicana. And at the time, it was a cigar that you really couldn't purchase. If you ran into Lido Gomez somewhere, you might be fortunate enough to be given one or two. And that's how most of these people were receiving these cigars, and they were just wicked powerful and just sort of a novelty cigar. It wasn't something you could go out and buy. You had to be given the cigar, by the manufacturer, which made it even harder to come by. And at that point in time, I saw the review, or not the review, but I saw the information on the cigar, and I thought, that's kind of cool, but being fairly new to cigars, I'll probably never have the opportunity to smoke that, so I'm not going to give it a whole lot of thought. It was just one of those cigars that you see that, you say wow, and then you sort of look past it. Like the Opus X football. It'd be nice to have one, but chances of me ever getting one are slim to none. Fortunately, it just happened to work out that I got a couple of these Cheroots, the AKA crack stick, AKA ice pick. So without any further ado, let's get into the logistics of the cigar. Now, there's not a whole lot of information on the web about this cigar. Now, there was something that I saw at, what was it? Do I still have it up? Zen and the Art of the Cigar. There's a review there. It's a blogspot blog, it looks like. A WordPress blog, which I'll link to in the review. And I'm told that it is a 38 by 5.5. And when I talked to Hal, the makeup of the cigar is sort of a close-kept secret. Lido Gomez is very secretive about his blends, and Hal really doesn't know what's in the cigar to pass it along to me. Now, the only thing he did offer me was that some people believe that it's 100% Ligero, and after smoking several of these, I understand why they think that, and I think they may be correct, and we'll get into that later on. But first and foremost, the cheroot. I really don't know how you're supposed to smoke a cheroot. I know that sounds kind of strange, but the head of the cigar is open, and all of the cigars I have are open. Cheroots are sort of a quick cigar. You dump the tobacco in, you just sort of roll it up, and you're done. There's no fancy cap. I'm not even sure if there's a binder in this cigar. And from what I understand, they don't go into a press. They're supposed to be very quick and easy, and well, that's why it looks as rugged as it does. The cigar has an opening, but I find that when I smoke them without trimming any more off the head of the cigar, I get a hot spot on my tongue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up the cigar just a little bit more, and it tends to alleviate that hot spot. So just clip off just a little bit and move right along. Anyway, the draw is nice and free. There's very little resistance. It's got a sort of an earthy and peppery aroma to it. I was sort of sniffing it a little bit ago. That same sort of peppery aroma comes through the cigar on the cold draw. As far as the aesthetics go, this is a hideous cigar. If you were to look at this for the first time, you'd think, you know, do I really want to smoke that? It's not really round. It's very lumpy. The wrapper color is sort of a dusty brown. It's got a lot of sunspots all over it. There's just several medium-sized veins that add a lot of texture to the cigar. It feels rough. It looks rough. It looks a little dry to the sheen. It appears dry. There aren't any quote-unquote defects in the cigar. There's no, you know, I don't have any cracking. There aren't any, you know, there aren't any obvious flaws. I mean, it looks rugged and just rough, but it doesn't look flawed. You know, I'm not seeing, you know, cracks, splits. The seam, the spiral down the cigar looks clean. It doesn't look all wavy and jagged. It doesn't look like the cigar was just sort of rushed together any more than a Cheroot would be rushed. But all in all, it's a solid cigar. It feels like a solid cigar, but it looks very, very rough. So anyway, with that said, let's move right along to lighting the cigar. Now, as far as more specifics on the cigar go, the price point is $7 a piece, and that is not an error. It is $7 each. They are $7 a piece. Boxes of 20 go for $140. And they, as I mentioned, these are exclusive to Empire Cigars in Raleigh, North Carolina. And you should definitely check out the interview with Hal Rubin to understand where these cigars came from, so you can understand why they are as expensive as they are. Now, I've got the cigar just about lit. It takes a little work to get it burning, and the resting smoke that comes off the cigar is pretty pungent right off the bat. It's sort of like if you ever burned leaves. It's sort of got a very rustic, sort of earthy, dry aroma to it. So, with that said, I'm going to finagle with my cigar a little bit more so I can get it completely lit. I will be back. We'll get the first third underway, and we'll see how the Flor Dominicana Cheroot goes.
About 4 or 5 years ago, the club that I belonged to in Connecticut had a tasting of the 25 top cigars, CA's top 25. And Dave Sabona was a member of our club, so he supplied a lot of those cigars that year. And one of the cigars that year was the Chisel, and Lito wasn't sure that he could get the Chisels to the event in time, so he sent Dave Sabona with some of these Cheroots. I think it was almost like a goof, because our club really, really liked full-bodied cigars, and we were always challenged to find something that could basically put us on our butts. And one such thing was like the El Cobre, which was another thing that came from Oliva that was super, super powerful, and, you know, we just loved those, where, you know, the stronger the better kind of thing. So anyway, the Chisels did show up, but we all got to try one of these Cheroots. And, you know, to a man, everybody kind of fell in love with them, but of course they weren't a production cigar, and really the only way to get them was to, you know, run into Lito somewhere. Well, welcome back. It hasn't been very long at all. Actually, it's been about 10 minutes. Generally, I like to go a little further into the cigar than this, but I thought this was as good a time as any to show you something with this particular cigar. It's out. And in the time that I sat the cigar down, jotted down a small note on a notebook beside me, and picked up my camera to take the 10-minute photograph, the cigar had gone out. And I had mentioned that that people get this impression that the cigar is all Ligero, and I said we'd touch on it later, and that's the whole purpose of this, is that Ligero burns very, very slow. When there's a lot of it in a cigar, you'll tell that you'll be able to see that the cigar doesn't burn properly. It either burns very slow, or you have burn problems, trouble keeping it lit, and that's and I've had this problem with every one of these Cheroots that I've had.
they just don't stay lit. And I think it's from a very high level of Ligero. It tastes very powerful. But if I was going to judge it on the way the cigar behaved alone, that would lead me to think that there was a lot of Ligero in the cigar. Now, the ash itself is kind of powdery and flaky. For a cigar this thin, it seems fairly strong. It didn't take much to knock it off at the end of the cigar, but we're dealing with a ring gauge of about 38. So with that said, my hypothesis, yeah, that's right. After I'm taking a shot in the dark at the Ligero composition, let's get into what I think of it so far. Right from the get-go, this cigar is just full-blown a full-blown powerhouse, and you just get blown away by the strength. Right, as soon as that first little bit of smoke comes through the cigar, you can tell that it's just very powerful. The first bit of smoke that you retrohale, it's got an overwhelming sort of a peppery aroma to it. It kind of burns a little bit coming back out through the sinus cavity. Personally, I kind of like that. I don't think it's too much, although some people may find it way over the top. The finish leaves you with the feeling of a thin film completely across the top of your mouth, across the tongue, walls of the mouth. It gives you sort of like a molasses sort of texture in your mouth. You can feel yourself salivate, and it's just sort of thick in there, and that heaviness lasts for a little while. The flavor is interesting. As I mentioned, there's a heavy pepper. But even with this much strength and power, I'm getting more subtle flavors, which I'm really enjoying. There's a nuttiness that sort of lingers in the background, which is nice. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to pick it out. It sort of just lingers right behind the peppery flavor. That's nice. There's some leather flavor in there as well. And I'm getting something else now that I relit the cigar, and I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm definitely getting a tingle in the back of my throat. There's quite a bit of spice, pepper, and power just jam-packed in the cigar. As far as the burning characteristics go, I know right from the start that I'm going to have to pay a lot of attention to the cigar if I want to keep it lit. It has a tendency to go out if left unattended for more than a few seconds. The burn rate is obviously going to be faster because I'm constantly puffing on it to keep the cigar lit. Burn line is fairly straight. I'm not experiencing much trouble as far as that is concerned. I'm still getting used to how this camera functions, and I can't get it to, there we go, focus on things that I want it to all the time. But the burn line's fairly straight. It's fairly thin. The ash color is sort of a medium gray. It's kind of powdery, as I'd mentioned, the texture of it. All in all, it's starting out as a very powerful but enjoyable cigar. So with that said, I'm going to take another quick break. Sit tight. I'll be back. We'll do the second third of the Flor Dominicana Cheroot, aka crack stick, aka ice pick, and I'll be back and we'll see how the second third develops.
And Cheroots always were kind of the rough rolled cigars that blenders often used to taste cigars, and locals always smoked Cheroots because they were easy to roll, and they were cheap, and they were a good way to taste tobacco. So anyway, I spent the next 2 years trying to chase down some more Cheroots because I was addicted from like stick one. And the only way I could ever get any was like at an RTDA. I'd run into Dave Sabona, who was good friends with Lito, I guess, and Lito would provide them to him once in a while. So we would, he would give me some, and I'd trade him for something else. And I started bugging every single retailer that I came in contact with to get me some, and it seemed just impossible. I'd run into the reps, and I'd bug them, and then I'd run into Jack, who was the national sales manager for Flor, and just beg them for some more. I mean, they were that good, and just couldn't get a hold of them. finally, one retailer who had some sway with Lido convinced him to make me a couple of sample packs, basically. And so I got 2 packs of these, and they weren't even in a box. They were just wrapped in plastic and cedar, and really as rough as the cigar was, so was the packaging. But I was thrilled, and I treated them like gold. But I also shared those with my friends who taste, and to a man, everybody always loved them. But again, they were like the holy grail, impossible to get.
Well, welcome back. I'm plugging right along. It's been about a half an hour now, and as you can see, I'm about halfway through my cigar. Most of the way through or part of the way through the second third. And cigar is proceeding along just like I would have thought. I still need to pay a lot of attention to it. If I don't, it quickly goes out. If I pay attention to it and puff on it a little faster than I normally do, it burns very well. I'm not having any sort of catty-womp burn problems, nothing strange or awkward going on because of all the Ligero. It's just a little difficult to keep lit. And I think maybe that the burn problems that you sometimes see as a result of a lot of Ligero might be because it's sort of shifted off to one side. And I think maybe this one's burning evenly because there's just so much of it in there that, it's comprised mostly of Ligero, if not all Ligero. So it just burns like it should. In any case, cigar is very powerful, and the punch and the body, it just steadily increases throughout the first third into the second third, and there's a lot of it there. It's got a very interesting quality to it. If you retrohale the smoke, you take a mouthful of smoke and then force it through the back of your mouth and then up through the sinus cavity. I get a very heavy peppery blast, but I also get this sensation of heat, and not like the smoke is hot, but if you've ever eaten a good horseradish or like a Chinese mustard or something like that, where you take a little bit too much and you get that really hot sensation that comes through your sinuses, makes your eyes, tear up just a little bit. I get that same sensation with the cigar, and I think it's fantastic. Granted, it doesn't sound appealing to everyone, but I kind of like it. The finish stays very heavy. I still have that feeling of film throughout my mouth. It lasts for several minutes after you expel the smoke. And if you get a little bit of residual smoke in your mouth, like you don't get all of it out, and then you take a breath, especially through the mouth, you get a little bit of that smoke in your lungs, and it's enough to take your breath away. It's very potent. The flavors are very interesting too. For such a powerful cigar, I'm getting a lot of more subtle flavors, like a nuttiness. There's a wood flavor in there. There's a leather flavor. There's just a lot of complexity to the cigar, and it's kind of surprising because of how powerful it is. I would really expect, well, I shouldn't say really expect, but I would think that so much of this sort of a peppery blast through the sinuses would really wash out all the other flavors, but for whatever reason they really shine, especially after the smoke is expelled. You get this sort of wave of more delicate flavors, which is very nice, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. The smoke volume is fantastic. There's a little bit of resistance to it. I could probably tighten that up a little bit if I didn't clip the cigar, but as I had mentioned initially, when I don't do that, I get a hot spot on the tongue, which is a little uncomfortable. So I'm willing to deal with the more free draw to eliminate that sort of hot spot on the tongue. The burn line is thin. It's pretty much even. The ash is fairly strong, sort of a medium gray in color. Still has a very powdery texture to it, and that really about sums up the second third. I'm really enjoying it, and it's very surprising for something this ugly and this powerful. It really does have a lot of subtle flavors that I think are fantastic. So with that said, I'm going to take another quick production break. I'll be back one more time to do the final third, wrap up the cigar, and then I'll let you be on your way. So sit tight.
So then another year or so passed, and one of the retailers in New York that I always dealt with for tough to get stuff. Had a relationship with Lito, his father, and his father before him had been in the tobacco business, so they knew Lito from the very, very early days. And Lito had made some private blends for this shop, and I begged him to get me some, and he managed to get 10 boxes out of Lito, and Lito actually put them in boxes now, and you know, they were a little less rough than before, but the flavor was still there. So anyway, lo and behold, this was all as kind of a fan of cigars, but I'd never been in the business, even though I'd gone to the RTDA 5 or 6 years in a row. And, you know, finally I went into the business myself and became a retailer in North Carolina. And the first month I was in business, Lito came to visit, and when I told him I was the guy that was always chasing the Cheroots, he, you know, kind of laughed and said, "So you're the guy that's been bugging me for all these years." And finally, I said, "Lito," you know, he said, "What can I do to help you here in business?" I said, "Lito, the one thing you can do is, you know, make some Cheroots for me. You know, I know my customers would love them, and I know the whole world would love them, but, you know, give me an opportunity to introduce these to the world." And he said, "You know, I'll make you a few boxes, blah, blah, blah." And, you know, really, it was tough, but he laughed and agreed that he would do it. And, you know, since then, he's been making me 25 to 30 boxes every month, and it seems like I still have an exclusive on that for now, and everybody who tastes them seems to love them.
Well, welcome back, and as you can see, I'm getting down to the last bit of my Flor Dominicana Cheroot, and I got a little bit of cigar sludge on my lip, and it kind of burned. That was a little bit of like a tar buildup, which happens from time to time. I just sort of reclipped the cigar, and everything should be good. I clipped off all the tar droplets that built up on the surface. Throughout the final third, I've been at this for about an hour now, and the body is just continually building. It hasn't really hit a plateau. It's still very powerful, and I'm still getting a blast of pepper through the sinuses. And I'm still getting that sort of a heat feeling that sort of wafts up through the nasal cavity, which again I find quite enjoyable. The finish is still heavy on the mouth, you know, that thick film sort of feel. The flavors are fantastic. I'm still getting a very heavy peppery blast. I'm getting some spice, some flavors that don't stand out as much, leather, wood, a little bit of an earthy tone. And all in all, I think it's a very good cigar. Again, I'm just amazed at how much subtlety the cigar has when it packs so much of a punch. You know, I would really expect everything to get washed out by all that power, but it does a tremendous job of keeping your interest in having all these subtle flavors. It's burning well. I still need to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't go out. It's done that twice since I've turned the camera off last. Burn line is good. Ash is still medium gray in color, still sort of powdery. And you know, as far as what I think about the cigar, it's a $7 cigar, and to be completely honest with you, I think it's very expensive for what it is. Before I talked to Hal, I had smoked a couple of these, and being a Cheroot, I just assumed, you know, $2. But a $7 cigar, it's pretty expensive. And you know, if I were to walk into a cigar shop and see a $7 Cheroot, the chance of me picking up are very slim. After I talked to Hal and understood the, you know, not so much the rarity of the cigar, but the exclusivity of it, I can see why it's a $7 cigar. And from what I understand, he sells quite a few of them. They are very good. They're pricey. I would definitely smoke more of them in the future, but that $7 is a hard pill to swallow, especially when I smoke a lot of the Oliva Series G Maduros, which are, you know, a little under $4 a piece. This is definitely one of the most powerful cigars I've ever had. It's definitely something I would smoke at night after a heavy meal, and I think it would have no problem cutting through, you know, a steak dinner with potatoes and anything else that would be heavy and really lay on the taste buds. So, you know, all in all, I'm really happy with the cigar. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm very surprised at how flavorful it is and all the subtleties that it carries along with it. It's all in all, it's just a very nice cigar. So that does it for the review of the Flor Dominicana Cheroot, aka Crack Stick, aka Ice Pick. Now, if you haven't checked out the interview with Hal Rubin yet, I would suggest you do that. I'll be linking to that at the end of this review, as well as linking to the original review I found on the web to get some of the information as far as the size is concerned. What I'll be smoking next week is a cigar that I can't remember the name of. I believe it comes out of California, out of a shop in California, and it's a barber pole. So it should be pretty interesting to see how that one develops and how that one goes. I'll see what I can do about maybe dropping the name of the cigar into the end of the review once I dig it out once again. So there you have it. There's the Flor Dominicana Cheroot, exclusive to Empire Cigars at the moment in Raleigh, North Carolina. The order information is in the Hal Rubin interview if you're interested in checking them out. The only way you can order them at this point is through email and by calling Empire Cigars up directly. They're in the process of getting a website up and running so that you can order the cigars directly from there instead of needing to call or email. So there you have it. Until next week, happy smoking.
So that's the story. And you know, as far as construction goes, that's, you know, if you know Lido, you know a lot of things are mysteries, and this is yet another mystery, other than there's at least 3 different Ligero leaves in there, and there's been rumors that it's pure Ligero. When I asked Lido, he kind of chuckles. When you smoke one, you'll see that that could be the case, because it really has a lot of kick and a lot of nicotine on the finish. You know, the cigar looks rough, but when you smoke it, you'd be surprised at the smoothness. It's a very deceiving little smoke. And, you know, they've got different nicknames, anything from crack sticks to ice picks to lots of things. My favorite is the crack sticks, because my customers become addicted to them. They're really something. But the other thing is that they're definitely not a morning smoke. You want to do it on a full stomach, and you want to do it kind of towards the end of the day, because if you smoke them early in the day, not only will they make you a little bit dizzy, they'll kind of ruin your palate for the rest of the day. You know, you can't smoke anything else because they're just, you know, so powerful that nothing stands up afterwards. And that's basically what I know about the Cheroot.